I'm Victoria Price. Thanks for listening to my podcast, Hide and Seek. This week's podcast is called Where is Love?, which is the title of the introduction to my most recent book, Living Love, 12 Heart-Centered Practices to Transform Your Life. I began the book this way. When I was 6 years old, my parents took me to see Oliver. It was my first movie musical, and OMG, I adored everything about it. The singing, the dancing, the costumes, the sets, the story, the songs. But there was one scene in particular that I never forgot. When Oliver, all alone in the dark basement of that lonely London orphanage, sang "Where is Love" in his beautiful soprano little boy's voice. His song cracked open my heart. Even as a very little girl, I got it, though I certainly wouldn't have been able to articulate it in these grown-up words. Oliver's plaintive plea was the impetus for everything that happened, not just to him, but to everyone in that movie. An orphan boy desperately missing his mother, trying to believe that somehow, against all odds, he will find love, family, connection, safety, and hope, enters a whole world of people also looking for love wherever they can find it too. Seeing that movie and hearing that song, it wasn't the first time I understood that there were people in the world who didn't lead the incredibly privileged life I did. I grew up watching TV reports about the death and destruction of the Vietnam War, the hatred and hope of the civil rights movement. The nightly news brought heartbreaking images of starving children in Africa into our living room, their anguished faces and distended bellies, their mouths encrusted with flies, shook me to my core. Oliver's made-up movie misery couldn't hold a candle to what I saw every night on television. My parents wanted me to know what a remarkable life I'd been given as the daughter of a movie star living in a mansion in sunny Southern California, so they didn't try to shelter me. But they weren't trying to scare me either. From the time I was a little girl, I understood that with privilege comes a responsibility to give something back to other people and to our planet. That was how they lived their lives, and it was how they wanted me to live mine. No, what got to me about that song was understanding for the first time that no matter what a person's story or circumstances might be, every single being in the world wants the same thing: to love and to be loved. For over 50 years now, the words of that song have sung themselves through my mind and heart over and over again. They've been a leitmotif of my life. Little did I know, as a 6-year-old, sitting between my parents in a movie theater, that the question posed in that song would become the impetus for my lifelong spiritual journey. Where is love? So that's how I started the book, and I've never stopped believing that we all want to love and to be loved, yet my life has been filled with the same confusion and pain that most of us have felt. Because if we want to be loved and to feel loved, then why is it so hard? Why do we hurt others, and why do others seem to hurt us? And if it is so hard, why do we still care so much about loving and being loved? And I began my book with that question because I think the thing that I have done the worst but cared about the most is loving. Yeah, we're all seeking love. But sometimes we're also hiding from love. Hiding from the love we sought and then decided we didn't want or deserve, or that ended up hurting us or perhaps not being enough. But is any of that really love? The question I asked was, where is love? Well, when we're looking for love, as the song goes, in all the wrong places, that's our first clue. Not the wrong places part, but the looking. Because love is something not to be found out there. Love is an inside job. Where is love? In us, all around us, in others. So why do we think we have to look for it at all? And why, when someone else seems to have screwed up loving, or we screw up loving, why do we feel so heartbroken and ashamed? I think it's because we know we've lost the thread, the truth that we're all born knowing, that the only reason we're here is to love one another, to love the world, and to love with the big L. And in doing that, express and emanate love in everything we do. And yet, many of us would agree, we're not doing such a great job. Often I hide because I'm ashamed of how badly I've messed up just loving. But mostly I seek because I want to learn how to love more and better. And then I share because I think that we all want the same thing. But, and here's the kicker, then I hide some more because I'm ashamed again of how badly I've messed up loving. And that's the clue to this whole ridiculous cycle. If we're not changing because we're afraid we can't change, then we keep hiding or just not showing up, and then nothing changes. But if we remember that we are all born knowing how to love, then change begins by setting the intention to show up to the truth of who we really are inside. This morning I was thinking about my mother and how I still wish that I could ask her to tell me that she always loved me despite all of the things I did wrong. But of course, she did love me despite all of the things I did wrong, because she loved me the best she could. I just heard her wanting me to do better, or her criticisms of the things I genuinely did wrong as not love. But it was love, just not the love I always wanted. It was tough love, or the love that wanted me to do better, wanted something better for me. So what that told me is that I heard love as not love, and then carried that not love story forward into all the ways I've perceived myself as not being able to love, not being loving enough. The other day I took a weekday off from work. Now, I never do that. I didn't check email at all. I left it open-ended. I made no plans, and I just did some things I love. I walked in beautiful gardens and took photos of flowers. I drove on beautiful mountain roads and stopped to look at the views. I wandered through a cute town. And then I sat outside with my beloved dog Allie and listened to those birds that I love sing. It was a glorious day. Why? Not because I did all those things, but because I did them in a different way. I took the pressure off myself to have a perfect day, a day that I could look back and say, I loved that day. And I just showed up in gratitude and joy and listened and went where I was led. And this was such a remarkable thing for me because it actually felt loving and easy, and that hasn't always been the case. I've been so driven to prove myself to be a good person, to work hard in order to make up for the ways I perceive myself as a failure, that I'm not always very nice to myself. And when you're not very nice to yourself, it's hard to be nice to others, even when you want to be. That tough voice that is hard on yourself is going to be hard on others too. You know, in every spiritual tradition, there's some version of the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Love your neighbor as yourself. But if we're not very good at loving ourselves, how the heck are we going to be any good at loving others? You know, we think that if we let ourselves have cake and ice cream, or buy those shoes, or take that trip to the ocean we've been wanting, that's being good to ourselves. But as we all know, we can eat that cake and ice cream and then hate ourselves for overeating. We can buy the shoes and hate the credit card bill that comes with them. We can take a vacation and be miserable or anxious because we've taken our miserable, anxious selves on vacation. No, really being good to ourselves is learning how to love. To love ourselves, to love others, to love the planet, to love our enemies. Yes, to love our enemies and those that hate us for reasons that seem ridiculous, like how we cast our ballot or who we love. And mostly, to love with the big L, the love that loves us all no matter what. So where is love? Inside, outside, and all around us, meaning that even if you're a hider like me, love is still right here, loving you, loving me, loving us all. And when we wake up and invite that love in, then we're automatically doing what we've been so afraid we can't do or only can do badly, or that others can't do or can only do badly. We're loving. When we invite love in, we're loving because that's what we're built to do. So how do we do this? Well, that's actually the point of my last book. It takes practice, heart-centered practice, to get us out of our heads and back into our hearts. Because no one ever taught us to lead from our hearts, because no one ever taught them to lead from their hearts. And when we do make heart-centered practice part of every day, well, guess what? We automatically are loving. And by loving a little more each day, it becomes a little less tempting to hide. I began this podcast because I was having a hard time figuring out how to emerge from a year of solitude. I was questioning which part of my being more isolated and quiet felt healthy and important, and which part felt like hiding and avoidance. And I know that there are lots of people seeking answers to those same questions as we begin to emerge. So, how do those of us who are by nature more solitary emerge in ways that feel healthier and truer to ourselves than maybe we knew how to do before? Well, I do know one thing. The answer lies in our hearts, not our heads. So that's what this podcast will be, exploring week by week how to find our way back to our hearts, to stop hiding our lights in an old, familiar darkness, and how to keep the quiet that we have grown so fond of in the places where we need it. Hide, seek, share. That's what this podcast is about. So I hope that some of you are able to find from what gets shared here some of the balance you need between hiding and seeking and sharing in your own hiding and seeking and sharing. So come back next week and let's share more of our hiding, seeking, and sharing. Thanks for listening to Hide and Seek, a podcast about hiding, seeking, and sharing.